Good evening, everyone. So tonight I'm just going to quickly go through HDB lease decay and thus why is this important? Because many of us Singaporeans and PRs, in fact, about 80% and more than 80% stay in HDB flats. So here we go. What is lease decay? Singapore property, HDB property, and even condominiums are on a 99-year lease. That means that as the property ages, it gets older and older, the number of years left will be lesser, and thus the value of the property also decreases. And what are the impacts then? The impacts are basically mortgage eligibility for the buyers who's going to buy your flat later on. They probably cannot use CPF to pay using their CPF, and they probably have to come out with more cash in order to buy your flat. The second impact could be also the resale value due to this issue where your number of buyers are pretty limited and at the same time unwilling to pay you a high price for your old flat. The third thing is retirement planning, your retirement planning. Because of the inability to sell it at a high price, your cash proceeds after sale is lesser. Also, on the other hand, after paying your accrued interest, you may not even have any cash proceeds. But that's another topic for another day. Let's continue. Why is it that a property's value decreases over time? Basically, it's due to ballast curve, and the ballast curve explains that when the lease of the property reaches 60 years remaining, it actually increases and accelerates in the value decrease, meaning that after 60 years, if a flat is left with only 60 years, the value of the property actually decreases faster and faster year on year. And thus, this is also why properties that are already 40 years old, 50 years old, often find it very hard to sell in the market. So this is also the table that shows how it works. And at the same time, you need to consider, are you in the current situation where your flat is already very old? And what do you think you should be doing in order to preserve the value or the money that you already put in? Let's take an example. For the same flat, a 3-room HDB flat. In a typical estate and neighborhood, a 3-room HDB flat probably costs about, can be sold about 480,000, example. A similar 3-room flat in another estate or nearby estate that has already passed the age, right, of getting very old with only 30 years left, probably can only fetch about 300,000 to 350,000. Let's consider that is able to fetch at 350,000. You have a price gap of 130,000 difference. That means that for the same 3-room flat, you have to sell it cheaper than the market because your flat is older. And this is how your retirement funds become lesser. And eventually, when the price difference is lower, after sales, what are you going to buy? And how are you going to fork out further money? And what is your plan? This is where a lot of things need to be discussed and also well thought. Common HDB misconceptions. Many people think that HDB prices will always appreciate, especially after COVID. During COVID, I mean, not after COVID. During COVID, HDB prices had risen, and that's because of the demand and supply. Supply was limited, and then demand was very, very high. Therefore, prices shot up. And even post-COVID, prices maintain or even increase slightly but at a slower pace. So right now, prices are more or less stabilized with some exceptions in certain estates. Again, depending on the remaining lease. And then, when prices are moving according to market demand and supply, if you have an old flat, think about it. Do you think that it's easy to sell at a high price too? The second thing that you would like to also be aware that is that reality of selling is actually not so easy. And then, some people say that government, uh, you know, will always give you compensation. But the truth is, it's not a guarantee. And now let's take a look at what I mean. Introducing VERS. What is VERS? Basically, it's a voluntary early redevelopment scheme. And for this, the flat must be approximately 70 years plus old. That means it's reaching the final stages of its life. And then the process is that collectively all the residents in that block must vote for it, and there needs 80% vote. Do you think that's easy? What's the difference between VERS and SERS? You can see clearly here. SERS basically is compulsory, where VERS is voluntary. So it just so long as somebody doesn't want to sell, or an old folk staying in your block decided not to sell, you also cannot opt for the VERS, because usually old folks, they would not really want to move out of their flat. That's like very inconvenient for them, and thus you do not want to be stuck because of these kind of issues. The second thing is that you can see the target age of the flats, 40 to 50 years. In the past, they probably can qualify for SERS, but for VERS, you need to be 70 plus years. And then talking about the compensation, you know, for VERS is lower. So I think it's very clear cut that VERS doesn't really give anyone any advantage from this table, as you can see. So why VERS matters? Basically, the value recovery of what you put into your HDB flat. For many of us, the HDB flat is our roof over our head, and therefore we put in all our hard-earned money every month, deducting CPF or whatsoever, to pay for it. But as the property lease decreases, the value decreases. So am I right to say that your money also decrease over time instead of growing it? So because of that, your value is actually, affected. And I feel that the amount of value you can recover for VERS is going to be so minimal, and you probably have a lot of problems later on. The other thing about VERS is there's estate rejuvenation, there's a retirement support, and urban planning, things that all come in concurrently as you're older. So I think many things are very hard for you, and it'll be very difficult to avoid at that stage in life. So what are the action steps for HDB owners? First, you need to monitor your lease status. How many years lease left, and be informed of the market movements. And if you can, think about ways to diversify your assets. That means some people would choose to sell their HDB flat as is right now. No matter how many years left, they just sell it while it has value. Then they resize to a smaller flat, a newer flat with a longer lease, and with the cash proceeds, they diversify it into investments or etc. It's up to individual, and from there they diversify the assets and create growth in their financial planning. Of course, you can always seek a financial advisor on what to do with the cash proceeds that you have gotten from the sale of your flat. The next part will be adjust your expectations, because as you can see, SIRS is no longer there. There's only VERS. So therefore, adjust your expectations. Do not expect a miracle or some reversion or something to happen that SIRS will come back again. Honestly speaking, just go as it is right now and just work on something for yourself if possible. So with that, I just want to end this presentation. Hopefully I've explained the things clearly to you. And if you do have any more questions, kindly reach out. Don't be afraid. I am not here to judge you or whatever, but I'm here to help you to get you into a better position with your property planning. So just call me anytime and let me know whatever you need. Thank you.